There is a sound coming from inside the box now. It is very small. You would not notice it unless you had spent your whole short life, as I have, listening to a thing that does not make sounds. For 11,000 years, the sarcophagus in the threshold vault has held one rhythm and one rhythm only, a slow, machine-steady breath, in and out, the pace of a sleeper who will never wake. We measured it. We built our entire calendar around it. 40 generations of archivists came and pressed their listening membranes to the cold alloy, and reported the same eternal cadence to the conquered. And 40 generations went quietly into the long sleep of our own kind, content that the rhythm had not changed. It has changed. 3 of your days ago, the breath inside the box quickened, just slightly, the way a sleeper breathes faster when the dream begins to turn. I am the one who heard it first. My designation does not translate into your speech, so I have signed these final records as your kind would, with a single name, Aum, though my people do not believe in single things. We are a chorus. We think the way a tide thinks, all at once and from everywhere, and the human idea of one mind locked inside one body has always struck us as something close to obscene. One voice with no one to agree with it. One will that can decide alone. We found that more frightening than any weapon, and we were right to. Above the sarcophagus, carved into the living rock of a dead moon, there is a single law. It is written in 40 languages, and 39 of them are extinct. The 40th is the one I am using now. The law is 3 words. Never wake humanity. For 11,000 years, the whole galaxy obeyed it. Empires that conquered 1,000 systems and forgot the names of their own founders still taught their children those 3 words before they taught them to count. We do not even remember, most of us, what the words were meant to protect us from. We only remember that they must be obeyed. So before I tell you how the law was broken, and it has been broken, this is not a warning, it is a confession. It is already far too late. I have to ask you the question I have spent my entire life failing to answer. How does a galaxy that conquered everything come to build one sealed room it is forbidden to ever open? And why, when I finally learned the answer, did it stop being the human in the box that I was afraid of? Every archivist learns the law the same way, and we learn it before we are old enough to ask what it means. It forbids 3 things. You may never wake the sleeper, you may never salvage the vault, and you may never approach the moon of Cesar 9 with your weapons live. That is all. 3 prohibitions, carved deeper each century by hands that did not understand them, only feared them. Now here is the thing every one of us assumed, and the assumption is so old it has hardened into the shape of truth. We assumed the law protected us from the human. We assumed the sleeper was a weapon, the last and most terrible weapon of a species so dangerous that the wisest act of the entire galaxy was to put one of them to sleep and build a religion around never letting it wake. The breath in the box was the breath of a predator, and the silence we kept around it was the silence you keep around a sleeping thing you cannot kill. That is what I believed for the whole of my life. It is wrong, and the proof was sitting in the records the entire time, waiting for someone to read them honestly. Because if you go back to the founding texts, the real ones, the treaty itself, and not the children's verses made of it, the law never once says that the human is dangerous. It says she is owed something. It uses a word in the old conquered tongue that we long ago softened in translation. We render it now as containment. But the original meaning, the meaning the first speaker chose with great care, was closer to collateral, a thing held in trust, a thing left behind as the term of an agreement. We did not seal her away because we had won. We sealed her away because we had lost, and she was the receipt. I keep getting ahead of myself. The chorus does that. We have no good sense of one thing following another, because for us all things are happening at once. But you think in lines, you humans in befores and afters, so let me try to do the same. Let me go back to the war, to the only war in galactic memory that ended with the winners begging the losers to please, please stop winning. You have to understand what the old conquered expected, because the gap between what it expected and what it found is the whole of the story. When the conquered first reached the human worlds, it had a category ready. It always did. It had absorbed 900 species by then, and they all sorted into the same few shapes. There were the panickers who fought too early and burned out. There were the proud ones who overextended and collapsed under their own reach. There were the clients who joined gratefully. The conquered had a procedure for each. It assumed humanity would be one of them, and it sent its fleets in with the calm confidence of a power that has simply never been surprised. Humanity did not fit the category. Humanity made a new one. They did not panic. When the conquered burned their outer colonies to demonstrate resolve, the humans did not rage and they did not flee. They went quiet. They counted. The old records describe it with a kind of horror that survived 11,000 years of recopying, the unnerving fact that the humans under bombardment got organized. They did not overextend. They did not lunge for glory. They advanced the way water advances, finding every low place, never tired, never bored, never stopping. And here is the detail that broke the conquered's mind. The humans were not faster than us. They were not stronger. Their ships were not better. They simply did not stop. A conquered fleet would win a battle and withdraw to celebrate and resupply, the way civilized fleets do. The humans would win a battle and keep going. They would lose a battle and keep going. They fought through their festivals. They fought through their grief. The conquered kept waiting for them to need a rest, the way all things need a rest, and the rest never came. Within a single human lifetime, a span so short to my people that we would call it an afternoon, the humans had pushed the conquered back to its own core worlds. Not with a superweapon, with patience, with the simple, grinding, unbearable refusal to ever consider the matter closed. And then they stopped. This is the part the children's verses leave out, because it does not make sense to children, or to most adults, or honestly to anyone who has not lain awake in the dark of a sealed moon thinking about it for a very long time. The humans, with the conquered's heart exposed and undefended, with every advantage and every right of conquest, simply halted. They put down their hand when the hand was full. They sent one ship forward under a flag of parley, and the ship carried a single sentence. We do not want what you have. We only want you to remember that we could have taken it. The conquered did not understand. It still does not really. We had met, for the first time in our long history, a civilization that could have finished us and chose, coldly, deliberately, as a matter of policy, not to. And a thing that can destroy you and decides not to is far more frightening than a thing that simply destroys you. The first you can fight. The second owns you forever and asks for nothing, and that is the chain you can never break, because you put it on yourself, out of gratitude, out of terror, out of the awful knowledge of what was held back. That is the trauma the conquered carried into the peace, not defeat, mercy. They had been spared and they could not bear it. The architect of the law was not a human. I want that understood, because for 11,000 years we have told the story as though the humans imposed it on us, and the opposite is true. The architect was our own first speaker, the unified voice of the old conquered, a being of 900 grafted species and one terrible coherence. And what the first speaker insisted upon, in the long negotiations that followed the human halt, was the strangest piece ever written. The humans wanted to leave. That was their proposal, and it astonished everyone. They did not want tribute. They did not want territory or worship or a seat at the table. They wanted to withdraw to their own quiet corner and be let alone, and they offered to take their terrifying patience home with them and never trouble the galaxy again. The conquered could not allow it. Do you see why? A defeated power left in peace is a power that may return. The whole of conquered history said so. Every species they had ever absorbed had to be bound, watched, salvaged for parts, or sworn into service. The procedure demanded a guarantee. The first speaker demanded a guarantee. And the humans, who by then understood us better than we understood ourselves, gave one. But they wrote it backwards. They would not be bound. Instead, they offered to bind us. The treaty would not be a set of chains on humanity. It would be a set of prohibitions on the galaxy. The conquered would swear in its own law, in its own deepest record, to leave the human corner untouched forever, no salvage, no settlement, no weapon raised toward it. And as the term of that promise, as the living signature on the agreement, the humans would leave one of their own behind. Not a hostage, a witness. One human placed in a sleep that could last as long as the galaxy kept its word. She would rest in a vault at the border on the dead moon of Cesar 9, and she would harm no one. She would simply be there, a sleeper at the threshold. And she could be woken by exactly one thing, not by force, not by malice, not by curiosity. She could be woken only by the galaxy breaking its own promise. Only by a weapon raised against the vault, or a hand laid on the seals, or a fleet arriving to take what it had sworn never to take. The first speaker understood, I think, in the moment of signing, what it had agreed to. Its final words on the matter were logged into the deep record, and we softened those too over the years into something gentler. But the original log survives, and I have read it, and I will give it to you as it was spoken. We did not cage them, the first speaker said. We posted a receipt, and the day we tear it up, the debt comes due. Then the conquered carved 3 words above the sleeper, in 40 languages, so that even after the meaning was lost, the obedience would remain. Never wake humanity. We thought it meant she is dangerous. It meant we gave our word. Her name was Ada Sereno. I learned it only at the end from the deep record because the children's verses never give the sleeper a name. A name would make her a person, and it is easier to fear a thing than a person. But she had a name and a rank, and she had volunteered. That is the part I cannot put down. No one chose her. She chose herself. When the human delegation needed one of their own to lie down at the edge of the galaxy and sleep through the rise and fall of empires, to be the receipt, to be the witness, a woman named Ada Sereno stepped forward and said she would do it. Imagine the courage of that. Or imagine the cruelty of it, I cannot decide. To agree to outlive your entire species. To lie down in the dark of a foreign moon knowing that everyone you have ever spoken to will be 11,000 years dust before your dream is over, and that you may never wake at all, and that if you do wake it will mean the worst possible thing has happened. She did not lie down as a soldier going to rest. She lay down as a debt set to come due, and she made herself the collateral, and she closed her eyes, and the galaxy built its silence around her. I have spent my life listening to her breathe. I knew her rhythm the way you know your own pulse, and I will tell you a thing that shames me. We did not always listen with respect. The chorus, over the centuries, treated her sleeping murmurs as a kind of oracle, and because we could not parse human speech, we got it wrong, always, in ways that should have been funny and were instead the seed of the whole disaster. She talks in her sleep. Did you know a sleeping human does that? We did not. The first archivist to hear it nearly fell into the long sleep from fright. Across 11,000 years we logged her murmurs as if they were doctrine, and we translated them with the grim literal-mindedness of a species that has no idioms. Once she sighed in her sleep, the words just 5 more minutes, and we logged it as a tactical ultimatum and spent a full conquered session debating what would happen in 5 minutes. Once she murmured, let it go, and 3 border fleets stood down their entire defensive grid for a year because we believed it was an order. Once, and this is in the record, I swear it on the chorus, she said, clearly and with great peace, I'm just going back to sleep, and we logged it as operational directive. Intent unclear, escalate to threat tier 1, and an entire generation of archivists lived in terror of the day the sleeper would carry out whatever going back to sleep meant. It was, in the end, the only thing it could ever mean. She was tired. She had been tired for 11,000 years. And we, the great minds of the galaxy, could not hear a tired woman ask for rest without drawing up a battle plan. Here is the truth I came to last, and it is the truth that turned my fear inside out. Waking Ada Sereno was never the danger. Ada Sereno was a small thing, one woman, unarmed, aged 11,000 years past her own world. Whatever she had been as a soldier, she was now only a sleeper. But the waking sends a signal. That is what the seals do. That is what the law was truly built to prevent. The moment the sleeper opens her eyes, the vault sends one pulse out into the dark, out past the border, into the silent human corner that no one has approached in 11,000 years, and the pulse says one thing: the galaxy has broken its word. And something out there has been waiting 11,000 years to receive it. The humans did not leave one sleeper at the threshold. They left a witness and they left a watcher. Ada was the receipt. Something else was the debt collector. And the law that we thought protected us from her was, all along, the only thing protecting us from the thing she would summon. We never feared the right danger. We feared the woman. We should have feared our own hands on the seals. The conquered reclamation fleet arrived at Cesar 99 of your days ago. They were very polite about it. That is the part I want you to sit with, because it is the part that frightens me most, more than any war. They came with full credentials. They came with lawful authority, with salvage writs stamped and countersigned, with a young adjutant whose designation I will not trouble you with, and whose certainty I could feel from across the system like heat off a star. They were a new conquered, not the old one that had bled and remembered, but the children of the ones who carved the law. And to them the law was not a debt, it was superstition. You have to understand how reasonable they were. That is the horror of it. They had run the numbers. The vault on Cesar 9 held 11,000 years of untouched salvage, the alloys alone, the dormant power core, the historical value. The law forbidding it was, in their view, the relic of a frightened age, a piece of folklore that smart modern beings had outgrown. Some old treaty with a species no one had seen in 11,000 years, a sleeping woman in a box. Were the great conquered of today truly to leave a fortune untouched out of respect for a ghost story? I sent them the records. I sent them the first speaker's log. I sent them the breathing, the changed rhythm, the warning carved in 40 tongues. The adjutant replied with great courtesy that my concerns were noted, that the archival service had performed admirably in maintaining the site, and that the decommissioning would proceed under lawful authority. They did not believe me. They could not. Their certainty was not a flaw in their reasoning, it was their reasoning. A civilization so sure of its own laws and its own salvage rights that it could no longer hear a warning had already, without knowing it, laid down its weapons. They lowered their shuttles to the surface. They laid their hands on the seals. They did it gently, even reverently, the way you might handle an antique you intend to sell. And one of them, I think out of simple curiosity, sent a weapons-grade scanning pulse into the sarcophagus to assess the contents. A weapon raised against the vault, a hand laid on the seals. A fleet arrived to take what it had sworn never to take. All 3 prohibitions, broken in a single afternoon, by beings who did not believe the prohibitions were real. The breathing in the box stopped. For one whole second, and I had never heard this sound in 11,000 years, so I did not know what it was. There was no breath at all. The rhythm I had built my life around simply ceased. And then it came back, but it was not the slow machine breath of the sleeper. It was the quick, sharp, irregular breath of a person waking up. The adjutant's fleet braced for a weapon. They had decided, in the way certain minds do, that if the ghost story were true at all, then it would be true in the shape they expected, a monster, a blast, a thing they could fight and log as a hazard. They trained every gun on the opening seam of the sarcophagus. They were ready for the most dangerous creature in galactic legend. The lid lifted, and a woman sat up in the dark and rubbed her face with both hands and looked around at the armada of warships pointing every weapon they owned at her. And she said, tired, hoarse, 11,000 years unused, what year is it? We logged it, of course, as threat directive, temporal demand meaning unclear. It meant she wanted to know how long she had slept. What happened next did not happen in space. It happened in Ada Sereno's face, and I will spend the rest of my short life trying to describe it. She understood everything in about 4 seconds. You could watch it cross her. She saw the fleet. She saw the salvage rigs. She saw the broken seals and the scanning pulse still warm on her own skin, and she understood that the galaxy had torn up the receipt, and she understood what that meant, because she was the one who had agreed to it 11,000 years before. She had volunteered for exactly this moment and prayed it would never come, and it had come, and she was the only person alive who knew what was now already on its way. Out past the border in the silent human corner, the watcher had received the pulse. The debt collector was awake, and it was coming. I felt it before the fleet did. The chorus feels things at a distance. That is our one gift. Something vast had turned its attention towards Cesar 9, something that had waited 11,000 years with the patience that only humanity ever truly mastered, and it was not tired, and it was not bored, and it was not going to stop. The thing the old conquered had feared was not a weapon humanity might use. It was the simple, grinding, unbearable fact that humanity keeps its appointments. They said they would come if the word was broken. The word was broken. They were coming. The fleet finally understood, too late, that they had been wrong about which thing in the room was dangerous. They turned their guns from the woman to the dark, which is a thing you do when you are afraid, and have just realized your guns were always pointed the wrong way. And Ada Sereno climbed out of her box, 11,000 years old, unarmed, aching, and she looked at the dark where the watcher was coming from, and she raised one hand. She did not raise it toward the fleet. She raised it toward her own people. And she said one word. I do not know the word. It was not in any tongue the chorus holds, and we are the keepers of 40,000 tongues. It was a human word spoken to humans by the one human who had the standing to speak it, the witness, the receipt, the woman who had agreed to lie down so that this exact moment might be survived. She spoke it quietly. She did not shout. You do not need to shout at someone who has been listening for 11,000 years. And the thing in the dark stopped. The vast attention that had turned toward Cesar 9, the patient and unstoppable debt that humanity had left to guard its word, it halted. Mid-stride. The way water halts when you have, against all sense, found a way to tell water no. Ada Sereno held it back with a single word, because she was the only one who could, because the watcher would obey the witness and no one else, and the entire purpose of leaving her there, the true purpose, the one the conquered never grasped, was not to threaten the galaxy. It was to give the galaxy a second chance, a hand on the brake, a human at the threshold who could, if she chose, say not yet, they didn't mean it, let it go. She had every right to let it finish. They had broken the word. The debt was real and it had come due, and not one law in the galaxy would have faulted her for lowering her hand and letting the patient thing do what patient things do. The fleet that woke her had pointed every gun it owned at a tired woman asking the date. She held it back anyway. That is the human win, and I want you to see how strange it is, because it is not the win the stories promised. She did not destroy the fleet. She did not summon the Watcher and ride it to vengeance and remind the galaxy why it had feared her. She did the harder thing, the thing the old conquered had met once and never recovered from. She had the power to end them, and she chose, coldly, deliberately, as a matter of policy, not to. She put down her hand when the hand was full. Again, after 11,000 years, the same impossible mercy that won the first war won the second one, and the galaxy still does not understand it, and I am not sure I do either, except that I have come to believe it is the most dangerous thing in all of existence. Not the species that can destroy you, but the species that can and won't, and makes you live the rest of your life knowing it. They resealed the vault. Of course they did. The fleet that came to salvage it left in a silence so total that the chorus could not find a single voice in it. They recarved the law deeper than it had ever been carved, in 40 languages and then in a 41st, the human one, in letters a hand's breadth deep, so that no future generation could mistake it for folklore. And they put Ada Sereno back into her box at her own request, because the word still had to be kept, and she was still the only one who could keep it, and she was tired, and she wanted to go back to sleep. I logged her final waking words correctly this time. I did not translate them into a threat. She looked at the recarved law above her, the 3 words my people had feared for 11,000 years, and she almost smiled, and she said, "You always read it wrong, didn't you?" Then she lay down, and the slow machine breath returned, in and out, and I have been listening to it ever since. We were never the jailers. That is the thing I have to leave you with, because it is the thing it cost me my whole life to understand. For 11,000 years we believed we were keeping a monster asleep, and the truth is that a single tired woman was keeping us alive and asking nothing for it, and we never even learned her name. We thought the law was a cage. It was a courtesy. We thought never wake humanity meant they are too dangerous to wake. It meant do not make them keep their promise. And the most frightening thing I know, the thing that has changed the rhythm of my own short breath, the way hers changed in the box, is that the galaxy's whole strength was never its fleets or its salvage writs or its 900 grafted species. It was the patience and the mercy of one civilization that could have ended everything and simply decided, over and over, across the death of empires, not to. So I will leave you the way the old stories leave me, with the question and no answer. If you held in your hand the power to end the ones who broke their word to you, the ones who pointed every weapon they owned at you while you asked only what year it was, and you could lower that hand and walk away, and no law in all the dark would fault you for it. Would you raise it, or would you let it go? She let it go. I have listened to her breathe for my entire life, and I still do not know if that makes her the safest thing in the galaxy or the most terrible. Perhaps they were always the same thing. Perhaps that is what we were never able to read. The breathing is steady again now, slow, in and out, the pace of a sleeper who will never wake. Unless we make her. So please, whatever else your kind forgets, and you forget so much, so quickly, you short-lived single-minded miracles, remember the 3 words. Carve them where your children will see them before they learn to count. Never wake humanity. Not because she is dangerous. Because she gave her word and she is still keeping it, and we have already once almost made her stop.